If you're locked into one profession, one career, well, that's okay. You can be very successful, but it's helpful to take a step back and see what else is available.
Hey there, I'm Krista Vance, entrepreneur and operations leader.
And I'm Matt Vance, tech founder and author of The Review Cycle. This is The Culture Prophet.
We explore how strong workplace culture drives retention, reputation, and real business performance.
We talk with HR leaders, executives, and founders building people-first companies that actually win.
Production of The Culture Prophet is sponsored by Mobrium, the original employer reputation platform.
Mobrium helps employers take control of how their company shows up in AI search and on review platforms like Glassdoor and Indeed, turning employee feedback into stronger reputation, better hiring, and healthier culture.
Learn more at mobrium.com.
Welcome, everyone, for today's episode on The Culture Prophet. We're going to be talking all about career strategy. How do you plan and realize the career path that you want? And how can people leaders promote this positive growth among team members? We're excited to have Tim Toterhi,
really
CHRO. He's gonna get me on this, I can tell you. Tim Toterhi, CHRO coach and author, to share his expert advice. So thanks for being here with us, Tim.
Oh, it's my pleasure. The last name is an easy one. It's Smith Jones Toterhi, just easy as pie, right?
Do you know where that originates from, Toterhi?
So actually, it's a crazy story. It is legit an Ellis Island story. So when my family came over from Italy, the name got changed, and that often happened at that time.
Yeah.
And so we're not sure what it used to be 100%. There's some debates about that, but what it is now is unique because I'm the only, Toterhi on the planet. And if there's other ones that are related to me, so I can't do anything too terrible because I'm easily found.
Yep, it'll get traced back.
That is a cool story, though. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Wow, that's amazing.
And a little bit about Tim. So he's not your typical CHRO. He's an author, coach, and executive advisor who is passionate about slashing bureaucracy and rethinking old thinking. Tim has over 20 years of management experience in the Americas, Europe, and Asia with a focus on talent and performance management. He's been quoted in publications such as Fast Company, Forbes, Fox Business News, and the HuffPost, as well as profiled in the book Magnificent Leadership. Tim approaches his practice with a playful smile and an eyebrow up. I love that. Yeah, and we want to hear more, like, what took you from, you were a CHRO and now you're doing career coaching. What kind of has been your career path?
Well, it's kind of a come home again story, if you will, because actually my career started in the most unusual of places. I began as a fuel broker who had two really passionate side hustles during that time. I was a karate instructor and I was a freelance writer, and I loved both of those things. So when I first pivoted into HR, I was really going into L&D because I wanted to spend more time doing what I loved, which was that teaching and writing thing. And so I always, from an early age, was using transferable skills. So when I started in my career, I said, well, I have a little bit of sales knowledge, never going to be the greatest salesperson, but I know a little bit about it. So I came into L&D by selling training product. And I was a teacher. And so, well, I could become a corporate trainer. And I was a writer. And so I could start to write those training programs. And over time, it just was this, it sounds now like a natural arc. It was a little bit haphazard at the time, but it sounds great telling it in reverse. That, over time, you got into talent management and performance management. And before you know it, I was running a HR PMO, I was doing M&A, and then ultimately I get to a place where I'm doing a couple of stints as a CHRO. And it's funny, you get to the end of what you think you want, and it's great. But then you look around and go, you know what? Maybe there's something missing here too. And that's what I found. I was like, yeah, I love it, but I still miss the things that I started with. And so, a few years ago, I made that pronounced shift to say, you know what? Let me go back to doing a lot of what I started out to do and really love. And that's kind of the trajectory.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I feel like every opportunity we have has a purpose, has a time and a place. And you've come full circle back to that teaching and working with people, working with individuals. I think that's amazing.
And for people listening, I think that's also a cool example of, the journey of a career. You don't have to say, I for sure am going to achieve this one thing at all costs, because halfway there, you may realize that you have a little bit different passion for something else, or you get there and then you come back to something. Like, I think it's really critical to have an open mind along the journey, that things can change and develop, and allow yourself to have that space. So I think that's honestly really inspirational how you went about that.
Yeah, careers don't have to be linear, right? Go ahead, Tim.
Exactly. I mean, what you guys are saying is so important, because you have to balance the career strategy of having a goal and focusing on that goal, but also being open to opportunities when they arise, right? Because you never know what's going to come out of left field and say, you know what, maybe try that, maybe take a risk, and so forth. And so, yeah, balancing those two things are tremendously important.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your book and how that relates to the conversation.
Yeah, so I've always been a writer, and so my latest book is called The Three Gifts. How do we overcome adversity, navigate change, and find success? And so what I advise folks in the book is that there's really three things that we all need to be successful in whatever we choose to have as our endeavor. And that's perspective, persistence, and creativity. And believe it or not, sometimes perspective is the hardest one to master, because each of us just has a backstory. We only know what we know, whether we're a kid or we're a seasoned executive. We walk on stage with our backstory and our series of circumstances. So as an example, years ago, I grew up, I'm a Gen Xer, and so I grew up in New York. We were joking about that before, and my, don't sound like a soprano anymore accent that I got going on. But when I was a kid in that era, this was latchkey time. If you were economically challenged, you'd be, government cheese kind of thing. And that was the world that we lived in. And so in my neighborhood, when we thought about careers, we actually used to joke about what we called the 3 C's. Like, when you think about what you saw out there in the world, you could be a construction worker, you could be a cop, or you could be a criminal. That's it. There was no like SVP of logistics in our neighborhood, right? There was nothing like
right.
that. And so, it's funny, but if you have that perspective, you really need to take a step back and look at a wider angle and see what's available to you. Now, it's kind of a humorous anecdote, but it applies a little bit to the working world as well, because if you're locked into one profession, one career, well, that's okay. You can be very successful, but it's helpful to take a step back and see what else is available. Maybe you're an HR person for your whole career, but you know what? You want to take a risk and go into project management or finance or operations. Widening your lens gives you much more views of it. So that perspective is really important, right? So you think about that. The other thing that we look at is frankly, that persistence of the other tool that I say, and that's an easy one, except it's the hardest one, right? Because it's hard work. You've just got to bust your butt and go after what you want, but you have to work in a really thoughtful way. And what people don't realize sometimes is that's all about being ruthless with your time and focusing on the goal and delaying a little bit of gratification for that. So, that hard work thing you can't get away from. And then finally, just kind of quickly, is that flexibility and creativity piece, because sometimes hard work doesn't work. You can work as hard as you possibly want for something, and you're never going to be as good as somebody else, or you just don't have that skill set. So how do you get flexible and creative to leverage something else that can really propel your career? And if you have all of those three and you're willing to chase it, you can do pretty well for yourself.
And I really like that framework, honestly. I think about the creativity piece. That's I've said this before, but one of my favorite quotes is, creativity loves constraints. So if you have some constraints around
your natural gifts and abilities, then you have to be creative.
Like thinking inside the box instead of outside the box, that I think is kind of underrated, because outside the box, you may be daydreaming about all these resources and things that aren't actually realistic. But if you give yourself a box and say, what can I accomplish with these constraints and maximize what I'm trying to do, I think that's where a lot can happen. But you have to, as you said, have that perseverance to really
persistence.
That persistence. So how does that like apply in action? Like, let's say we've got someone listening who they're, maybe they're underemployed, or they're just not happy with where they're at. How do they apply these 3 things to take them from, all I know is I'm unhappy, what do I do next? What do you say to that person?
Yeah, I think part of it is thinking about alternative options. Is everybody has a whole host of skills that they can employ in different ways. So as an example, I was a writer for the newspapers at the time, believe it or not. This is even before internet, and they had multiple newspapers, and you could make really good money doing that as a freelancer, and then all of a sudden it goes away. The whole business went away. Well, does that mean that you can't enjoy that passion anymore, or do you reposition it into a different vehicle? And that vehicle could mean, okay, well, now you're going to write product that are available on the internet. Maybe that's not your thing. Okay, well, that same skill set can be applied internally in corporate communications in an organization. So the whole thing is to not get trapped into the blinder mentality, like this is all I know, I only can do this. And so part of it is widening that perspective of it is huge. The other thing, hard work is hard work. That's part of it. But the other thing is to develop workarounds, because sometimes, frankly, we don't have the skills that we need to leverage a certain area. That doesn't mean we can't do it. And I'll give you a very simple, practical example, and then we can bring it out. So when my daughter was young, small kid, loves to cook and loves to bake, right? Well, sometimes she needs something from the top shelf. She can't reach the top shelf. Does that mean she can't bake? She can't cook? No. Well, her workaround at the time was to call dad or to get a step stool, right? That's a very simple thing. But other times in our work life, we have things that we're not good at, and we need to either work to get better at them, or we develop creative workarounds to do that. So somebody's listening saying, well, I'm not really sure, I'm frustrated. That's where we need to think about it. I think we can also broaden the topic to make some decisions around when it's time to change gears, because there's a formula to think around that as well. We can talk a little bit about if you like.
Quick pause to thank today's sponsor, Mobrim.
Is managing all your employee reviews on multiple platforms a headache? Mobrim gives HR leaders a centralized review inbox where you can see every employee review across platforms like Glassdoor, Indeed, and more in one place.
You can even respond faster with AI-generated replies trained specifically for employer reputation management. So responses sound thoughtful, not robotic.
Consistent, timely responses build candidate trust, strengthen public sentiment, and send strong engagement signals to search and AI platforms.
If managing reviews still feels scattered and reactive, Mobrim can help you take control. Learn more at mobrim.com. Now back to the conversation.
Yeah. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny when people are thinking about making a change to their career. Most career coaches will say, well, if you're not earning or you're not learning, it's time to scoot, right? And that sounds great. That's a great soundbite, but we know that the world is a little bit more complicated than that. And so we have to dissect it a bit, right? So if I'm talking to a candidate and thinking about, well, where do you want to go or should you leave? The rule that I use for folks is that if you love what you do, but you're frustrated with how, where, and when you do it, it's probably time to change locations, right? You might want to change the job, the circumstances. Maybe you have a manager that you don't get along with, or maybe there's processes in your company that don't work. Something is there, but you still like it. The moment that you start to lose your why, that you don't have that passion for it anymore, that's where you might want to change professions or change disciplines, because it's not going to be fulfilling for you. But in either case, whatever you're facing, a big change or a small change, it's really important to move towards something. So and Matt, you brought up the folks who are listening and saying, I'm frustrated now. Frustration is great, but it can also be dangerous, because when we're really stuck and we're struggling, sometimes we look for an escape hatch and we say, I just got to get out of here. I got to do something different. And that's where we make career mistakes. So sometimes it's really powerful to slow down, right? And to think about, well, is this a small change I need or a big change I need? And let me move in the best right direction. And that's kind of what I would let them know, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. I think that is quite the framework. It's like the how, where, when, and why. Just going through that inventory with yourself helps you, almost like a decision tree of, should you be doing the same thing somewhere else, or should you be considering something Awesome.
Completely different.
I did want to get your take on this. This wasn't in the, prescribed questions, but I've seen on LinkedIn, someone posts, I just left this company because I just had to get out of there. And now I'm open to work. So here I am, everybody, come pick me up. Like, what do you say to that mentality of should someone just stick it out for a little while, or should they just get out of there sometimes?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So, I think we're more sensitive to mental health now than we've ever been in the work career. So I would say that you have to take care of yourself first, right? And so if things are legitimately that bad at a workplace where you're becoming stressed out, you're losing sleep, it's affecting your health in a negative way, then in that situation, that may trump the monetary issue that you need, right? And you might say, you know what, I need to get out, clear my head and move on. And even if I need to put on a career Band-Aid, that's okay, because it's so important. Most people's situations aren't that pronounced. If you're dealing with a unfulfilling situation or something that you're not growing, you want to move up and there's no opportunity for you, what I would suggest is a little bit of being practical. And this just comes from the fiscal PSTD of growing up the way I did, right? It's like you say, hey, look, make sure you have a place to land and then jump to it so that you can make sure you're looking before you leap. And that's my practical tendency on that. In either case, always be positive when you go. It makes you feel good if you bark on the way out or post something. You want to be thoughtful about being grateful, even if you learned a tough lesson somewhere, and then leveraging that. And frankly, be the manager that you wish you would have had and go forward in that regard.
Yeah, and hopefully most people are, before they're getting to the really poor mental health state at an organization, hopefully they're making those thoughtful, like, what do I need to change here, and getting to that before they get to the hard part, and then they can make that practical change instead of jumping ship and hoping you have enough savings to carry you through to the next opportunity. But I want to switch gears here a little bit, and maybe there's some listeners that we have who are happy with their job and their career, but they are recruiters or leaders, and I'd love to get your take on the business side, how you can help those candidates have, like, when you're hiring somebody, you want them to have those three things that you said: the perspective, the persistence, and the creativity. Those are great, almost intangible things that you're looking for in a candidate that can align with your organization. So what are some things that you use to determine if someone has that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because it's a tricky one, right? I think no organization has really figured out how to deal with potential. And that's what we're talking about a little bit, right? So we think about things like internal folks 9 boxes and how you would run that. That's where companies get tripped up, is they understand performance, but they really can't define potential. So they'll say, we want somebody with executive presence. And you ask 12 people and they got 13 different answers on what that looks like. And so it's hard to define. Well, when you're looking at perspective, persistence, and creativity, that's in that bucket, right? So, when we think about it from a candidate perspective, it becomes just as hard, because it's really, really difficult to assess someone's potential in a certain area. There's no magic formula. I mean, when you think about and there's really good products out there, but even some organizations that assess candidates coming in, they're the first ones to tell you, you can't make a hiring decision based on that, because even if it's a validated model, it's not a go, no go decision. It needs to be informed with everything else. So anyway, long-winded way of saying it's a difficult thing, but the way that I approach it is through what I call power listening, right? You actually have to have the conversation with people and listen for very specific things when you're working with a candidate. Because let's think about it. You maybe have 2, 3, max 4 45-minute conversations, and then you're going to have a financial decision that is huge for an organization. You got to get it right. So when you think about it, if you're sitting down with me for an interview, by the time you get there, we know you can do the job. You have the skills, the qualifications, you've been screened, but the reality is so can everybody else. There's a lot of other folks who can do the job. So when in a world where knowledge and experience is a commodity to a certain extent, I'm not interested so much in what you know. I'm interested in how you think and how you apply it. So the way that I look at it is you ask for things like your career history, right? Some kind of simple question is that. That's either the laziest question in the world or the best question in the world, depends upon what you're thinking. So imagine yourself in an interview and someone says, okay, hey, can you walk me through your career history? Right? That's either because I just picked up your resume 2 seconds ago, didn't bother to read it, and I want you to do my job, right? Or it's because I've actually thought about it before, and what I'm listening for a bunch of things. What do you say? What do you not say? What do you say first? What do you say with passion, right? And can you articulate a story that gives me a viewpoint as to why you made your transitions? Did you think through things as you went through them? Good, bad, tough times, hard times, right? Positive things. Can you tell that story? That gives me clues to it. So the answer to the question is, how do you define this stuff? Is when you're looking at your interview process, are they giving you experiences and stories that illustrate their ability to widen their perspective on things, to be persistent despite challenges, and to be creative when things go sideways? And that's what I'm looking for. And you know what's funny? If they don't tell me, it's not a math test that they're going to get 2 + 2 is wrong. I'm going to say, I'm actually looking for this. Can you give me an example of it? Then you find it. But you can't find what you're not looking for, and they don't know what they're offering.
Yeah, man.
And not everyone may have this perspective on hiring, and it is fantastic. But for people who are listening who are making that career change, this is a great interviewing tip as well, to center your interview around stories and experiences that can relate to the job that you're applying for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's about alignment on both sides. The hiring manager and the employee, or the potential employee, they both want to thrive. They both want to achieve things that are positive, because neither side wants to be 3-6 months in and be frustrated, because it's not good for anyone. So being honest and truthful in both sides, describing the job and describing yourself, is to everyone's ultimate benefit. Even if you're 9 months into unemployment and you're just screaming, give me any job, I'll do anything, you still are going to be benefited from being honest and transparent, I would think.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, what sometimes candidates forget, because it's so busy and it's got so noisy and it's really hard to get into that, even the initial interview, is that you forget sometimes that we're rooting for you. We want you to be the answer to our problem, to our issue, right? There's nothing better than to have somebody who's a rock star and walks in and you identify them. So what we'll say sometimes is that we're looking for specific things. So I want to hear about the times you took risks, and did it pay off, and why? I want to understand about when you had a failure in your job and what you did from it. Like, that shows me that more than you work hard with intent in mind, right? That goes to that persistence aspect. It's funny, I had somebody share things around workarounds, right? So there's 2 things when you get to discussions around your ability to score a job, and there's things that we all can't do. So I like the power of yet, right? So I can't do this yet. I don't do this well enough yet, but I'm learning it. So sometimes you'll find HR people say this, well, I'm not a finance person. I don't buy that. You're not a finance person yet. I don't understand AI yet. Great. Okay, that's one. Somebody says that, I light up, because they're somebody who's learning. The other thing is if they overcome something that is a challenge, right? So you have folks that will, they're world-class presenters, but they're dyslexic. They could never read a teleprompter, but they do it because they learn to adjust their process and tell stories. Fantastic. What else are you going to fix without me having to think about? There's really good ways to demonstrate excellence if you're opening to listen to it and share it.
Wow. Yeah. Very powerful.
This is such a small example of that, but sometimes my kids will say to me, I'm thirsty. And it's like one of my biggest pet peeves, because I'm like, okay, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, hey, you need to tell me what the solution is. Mom, can you hand me my drink, or can you hand me a drink of water or something, or can you get me a cup down or something? But instead of being the one who's sharing the problem, let's be problem solvers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any final advice here, Tim, that you'd like to share with people listening?
It's funny. I think that when you look at career change, everyone gets freaked out about it. And there's one thing that I love to debunk. It's that notion that people fear change. We hear this all the time. And I don't buy it. Because if you think about just the arc of anyone's life, right? We run towards change all the time. We go to school, we get married, we have kids, we get jobs and change and move locations and all this stuff. I think a more accurate statement is that we resist change that we don't understand or we fundamentally disagree with. And so when you're thinking about your career and you're trying to find your true north, right? If you're hesitant, it's probably not because you're fearful. It's probably because you need more information. And then if you get that information, then you can make a decision on what's most right for you. And you're the only one that'll ever be able to tell you what that is.
Change is the only constant. And I love the way you phrased that. And obviously you're pulling from tons of experience and amazing wisdom here. So thank you for sharing all of your tidbits today and such great advice for those on the end of career change and also on the side of the business and hiring. Anything else?
Yeah, I would just say to everyone listening, go check out Tim's book, connect with him on LinkedIn. We'll include links on both of those with this episode. And thank you again, Tim, for sharing your words of wisdom today.
Hey, my pleasure. Love the conversation.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for listening to The Culture Prophet.
If this episode gave you a useful idea, share it with a leader building a better workplace.
Production of The Culture Prophet is sponsored by Mobrium, helping employers to employ feedback into stronger culture and reputation.
Learn more at mobrium.com.
Until next time,
go find one way to prioritize your people and watch your profits grow.